historical scrolls. Ancient Acre was situated on Tel al-Fakar, about 2.5 kilometers to the east of the location of the old city. A greater settlement began in the late Iron Age and during the early Bronze Age, about 3,000 years before Christ. 1,000 years later, the town was fortified by a brick gateway on a high earthen rampart facing toward the sea. When the Israelites entered the land of Canaan, Akko was one of the cities given to the tribe of Asher, and for centuries to come it was under Assyrian rule in the 9th century BCE. Between the 6th and 4th centuries BCE, however, it was a Phoenician town under Persians. After the conquest of the entire region by Alexander the Great, the area surrounding Acre first became ruled by the Hellenistic Ptolemaic dynasty of Egypt and then the Seleucid of Syria. In the future, mainly Arabs will live in the old city center, peacefully cohabiting with Jewish residents in neighborhoods that will rise. Many people have and will conquer it, and even though Akko was never inhabited by the ancient Israelites, the Jews will come much later in time. Akko's importance rests in the past and will never be known as one of the important cities of Israel again. This city is, as you understand, very old. Farsa pauses and looks at Emmanuel before he continues. It is very old and during biblical times when the city was under Canaanite control. It is mentioned in ancient Egyptian scrolls from around 1800 before Christ that the city held great importance on trade routes between Egypt and Syria, but also to the city of Petra. It was the Greeks who called it Tomis. It became the singular most important harbor for trade. This was only eclipsed by the flowering of Caesarea during Roman times. However, the artificial harbor of Caesarea silted up with mud after the Arab conquest in the 7th century. Ibn Chilam made some developments in the port facilities of Akko, and the city and its harbor prospered once more. The city fell to the Romans' hands in 63 BC and was granted the status of colonia. During the Byzantine period in 330, the region passed into the control of the Roman Empire. Then in the early Arab period in 638-1099, many cities were abandoned and destroyed. Acre decreased in importance as an international port. The Annunaki Bible is remarkable as it actually tells us what is happening right now, don't you think? Farsa asks while his eyes glow as he looks at Emmanuel once again. Farsa, don't wait for Emmanuel to answer but continue reading. Acre are, as you see, an exceptional historical town in that it preserves the remains of the medieval crusader and their buildings beneath this existing Muslim fortified town, dating from now, this century, the 18th. The result is the exceptional structures of the capital of the medieval crusader kingdom of Jerusalem. Acre was a center for international trade because of its strategic position and its natural port. After the Crusaders had wrested Akko from the Arabs, they completely redesigned the town and made it at least 3 times bigger. They closed their new area in huge walls with rising towers and a surrounding moat. In this, the original Crusader work of Akko that you see today, its medieval appearance of the low houses and narrow streets is before the Turks came and most of the buildings were reconstructed. A golden age began for Akko. From this time, the Knight's Hall stem and one other Crusader fortress on the coast. The city continued to be a great trading town with shops and warehouses thriving in every corner. With more than 30,000 inhabitants, the city had become very large, but because of the foreign masses and influences from amongst others, Italian trading cities like Venice, Pisa and Genoa who set up businesses in Akko, the local government fell apart and the city became too hard to control and had to leave its ownership. The Crusader period really began in Acre in 1104, following the successful siege by Baldwin I, the king of Jerusalem, and the Genoese commercial fleet. The king himself settled in the city's northern parts, and here he built a fortified palace. Nearby the port, Genoese, Venetian, and Pisan merchants built autonomous quarters, and the military orders installed themselves close. During the 2 centuries of Crusader rule, Acre symbolized the interchange between the Eastern and Western cultures better than any other city in the world. In 1187, however, the Muslims captured the entire Crusader lands and Acre Acre was held for 4 years. In 1191, the Third Crusade was led by Richard the Lion-Hearted, and they recapture all of Acre and the nearby coastal regions. The story tells that the Second Crusaders established Acre as their capital only because it was impossible for them to retake Jerusalem, but as history shows, Acre kept a treasure. Farsha becomes silent and looks at the flickering candle. Parts of the scrolls are missing, he says, and continues to read on a new one. New neighborhoods like Montmazar were built to the north, and Acre was now given a double city wall. More palaces, more churches, and public buildings were raised. Then the Mamluk period conquest began, starting from the year 1291 and lasted until 1517. An Acre within the Mameluke of Farsa was totally destroyed and abandoned. Farsa looks upset and pauses again. Emmanuel, we believe that a man of great evil will in fact siege Acre in less than 100 years. He will defend it against the French, against a warlord called Napoleon. His name is El Cesar, also called the Butcher. Farsa stretched his back, and a cracking sound broke Emmanuel's thoughts. Farsa said, "We must find the Anunnaki Bible. We must find why Acre is so important and what the true connection is with the stone city." Emmanuel yawns too. All this listening to stories made him sleepy. "Stone city?" Emmanuel asks. "Yes, the city of Petra," Farsa replied. Emmanuel remembers. He thinks that all this information in such a short period is making him forgetful. "How," he says, "can the Annunaki Bible help us?" Farsa looks at him, then he starts to look confused on the floor, just as if he was searching for something. A Annunaki Bible is. Farsa are looking for the words to explain something so big. It is the book of logic. That is how I find the words to explain it. Farsa waves his hand pointless in the air and continues. First it tells us about how J-Scar and her species came to Earth, then the creation and the 40 kingdoms and all history and all future. Emmanuel shakes his head with logic. He asks and interrupts Farsa. The logic, Farsa says, is what tells the future. Just like the teller Ira writes, you can build a house, but it will never finish. Emmanuel could find 100 arguments at once to that statement, but instead of arguing with Farsa, he asked what Ira had meant by this. She means, Farsa says, that first we build a house and 100 years later someone will rebuild it or build a new one with the same architecture, but also with improvements. However, the improvements are only a reflection of something else someone once did. Emmanuel saw that Farsa was struggling with his explanation. Farsa shows a stone in the wall where they were standing. See, he says, someone carved something into this stone 1,000 years ago. Farsa is rolling on his words. 1,000 years ago someone wrote something on this stone, and today you see this pattern even on your royal ship. If I should ask you what it meant, you would tell me your story. Riba would tell her story, and the Phoenicians would tell theirs. From something as small as this, our destiny is being reborn and reshaped every minute. The key is in the Anunnaki Bible. It is a masterpiece, but in the wrong hands, only destruction. We need the Anunnaki Bible. Farsa lowers his voice, and it becomes firm and orderly. Emmanuel, I will send you further up into the sky than you have ever been, together with your friends, so far up that you will be able to pet the stars. Me, Rebal, and the others, we will try to find the Anunnaki Bible here. Farsa points to the ground while he speaks. The Crusader city is probably 7-8 meters below us now, below this room that we sit in. As for this, Farsa makes a great gesture with his arms, is probably built above another room. The Crusader fortress, belonging to the Knights of the Hospital, sleep below street level, and the entrance is opposite the mosque. The halls are believed to be barracks to the knights, who together with the other knights in a cove fought and defended the Latin kingdom. Seeing the Crusader knights were fighters and monks at the same time, they had very strict moral codes and they could not marry. So, opposite to the halls are the dormitory and the residence of the knights. Next to the residence is a dining hall with carvings decorating the stone walls. Farsa takes a sip of water from a tin mug. We believe that the secret tunnels below us lead to 2 destinations. Emmanuel, when you come above ground, take the highest point you find and look toward Petra, and then Galilee. Think about what it is you see. A pit in the center of the hall gives us access to an underground passage. This passage was discovered by the Crusaders when they built their dining hall, and no one knows where the passage leads. We think we know, so we will excavate it most secretively, Farsa says. The big blue becomes pitch black. As they leave the damp underground room, Emmanuel asks, "What am I supposed to do?" Farsa looks at Emmanuel. "Easy as pie," he says. "You shall find Jaiska and wake her up, then return home." Emmanuel can't help but look up into the sky. "Why don't you go?" he asks Farsa. Farsa looks back at Emmanuel while he still is gazing toward the stars. "What?" he says. "Do you think I'm crazy? I would never set my foot in a spaceship." The whole company moves back to the Sea of Galilee. Reba is getting sicker because of the dying angel in her body. Sometimes the angels survive if they get a new symbiotic body in time. Usually the angel dies with its host if the host is allergic or when they are old enough to pass on. However, if Jaiska were awake, she could save them both very fast. Now, no one knows where she has been for more than 2,000 years. The only proof even of her existence was the image of her in the cave, and the image itself wasn't really a proof. Now they were on their way to a spaceship. Emmanuel was a fearsome man. His looks were kind of intimidating, handsome but still kind of scary, with broad shoulders and neck, ice blue eyes and darker skin. He could pass for a well-dressed devil himself. When he looked at Reba getting sicker, his stomach turned. This was all his doing, and since the queen died, it was also pointless. He had never realized how much in his life was based on other people's opinions. The wrong man down and his destiny were changed forever. Spaceship. What on earth is a spaceship, and how is it supposed to sail in the sky? Emmanuel gazed at the sun, which were getting hotter. He took a scarf from the saddle herd and wiped his neck. "Jones," Emmanuel called on his cabin boy. "Yes, Captain," Jones answered. "How are you feeling?" Nathan, who rode beside Jones, threw his arm out and almost knocked Jones off the camel. "He is doing just fine," Nathan laughed deep from his belly. Jones got upright again and tried to hit him back but missed. "I am fine, sir," Jones answered. Nathan was relieved that the young boys were saved, even if Rebecca got sick. How old could Jones be, he thought. 13, 14. The war and the sea was no place for a young boy. Nathan thought Jones reminded him of his own son, except for the 1,000 freckles in his face. Nathan also agreed with young Jones. One day he would go home too. Jones turned to the captain. "So, I request to stay with Reba." Emmanuel looked at Farsa, since he didn't know how many it would take to run the ship. Farsa looks back at Emmanuel, also waiting to hear if Jones can stay. Emmanuel cleared his throat. "Yes, of course, if this is your wish." "May I ask why?" Jonas looks at Reba as she sleeps. "I think, sir, we can change angels back and forth to keep this one alive and to save Reba too." Emmanuel looks at Reba and then back at Jones. "Good idea. Your request is granted." Smart Jonas, smart. When they arrive at the Sea of Galilee again, Farsa takes his camel to one of the others, who seem to stand guard. Then he gesticulates to Emmanuel and Nathan to follow him. He leads them into a cave that seems to run like a tunnel under the Sea of Galilee. Suddenly the narrow passages open, and before their eyes, just like the image of Jaiska, a magnificent ship in the brightest metal floats only centimeters above the surface. This cave doesn't look to have any walls, but in a sphere surrounding them the water runs blind. "Can I touch this?" Emmanuel asks, remembering that the head were an image. Farsa smiles. "You like it?" "Yes, of course you can. Just walk over there and feel it." Emmanuel feels like a child. It was beautiful, whatever this was. He takes a step out and sinks down in the water. "Oh," Farsa screams, "I forgot to tell you, you can only reach it by swimming." Nathan jumps into the water too, and they both start swimming toward the ship. Emmanuel feels the body of the ship, and he is more than amazed. "How do we get inside?" he asks Farsa. Farsa lifts something from his pocket and holds it up high. Click, click, click. "You got a piece of metal from me. You still have it." He calls back to Emmanuel. Emmanuel kept treading water and started enthusiastically searching his pockets, and there, in his left pocket, the little metal toy were. He clicks it once, twice, and 3 times. Emmanuel or Nathan can't see anything happen at all. "Touch the ship." Varsa shouts. The ship grabs both Emmanuel and Nathan, and as if it had started to devour them, they got sucked in. Emmanuel, Nathan, welcome aboard. This pink fluid that surrounds you will probably not drown you. Just relax and take a deep breath. The ship talked to them. Emmanuel looked at Nathan, who seemed to be in a shock. They both felt a panic rising since they couldn't get out the same way they got in, and they started to feel dizzy. Nathan shook his head and began to turn bluish in the strange light. Please, the female voice said again. If you don't breathe, you will faint. Or never mind, don't breathe. Nathan soon couldn't hold his breath anymore, and in absolute panic he gasped for air in the pink water-like fluid. Emmanuel watched Nathan and thought he'd see him die before he did himself. But as soon as Nathan opened his mouth, kicking and scratching everywhere, and inhaled the liquid substance, he became normal again. Nathan showed he laughed and tried to talk. The water made it impossible to create anything but strange sounds. Emmanuel couldn't keep his breath anymore either, and with some comfort of that Nathan still was alive, he opened his mouth and inhaled too. Suddenly he felt more alive than he'd done in years. He felt like he had rested for months. Please be seated, the voice talked again. The small ship was lit by the pink fluid and everything else with strategic fluorescent blue lines. Emmanuel started to look for a chair to sit on, and so did Nathan. Can you see the darker contour, like an imprint on a pillow, just above your head? The voice said. Emmanuel and Nathan looked up, and as they reached for the imprint thing, two entire body-shaped beds smoothly came down. They took place in them, and the voices started to talk again. On this journey you will be traveling in fluid. It is easier to make a solid object go faster, and for your health, this solution will guarantee you a safe trip. The pink fluid is what makes your space travel possible. I am a copy of Ira, the teller. Now, Captain Emmanuel, you have the star charts in your head, and we are looking for J. Scott. Whatever coordination you think of, I will go. Are you ready? Then please share your thought. Emmanuel looked at Nathan, and he was even paler than the fluid. Nathan shakes his head slowly. Captain, don't do it. Don't think of anything. He thinks. Emmanuel makes a grimace, just like if he'd understood what Nathan was thinking, and blew some air bubbles between his teeth. First nothing happened, then the pressure started building in their ears, and a feeling of heaviness and getting pressed down emerged. A big shield hiding a glass dome unfolded around them like a curtain, and suddenly they saw the water on the outside rushing in all directions. It became brighter and brighter, and soon they cut through the surface with a loud bang. On the side of the lake Riba work, she took Joan's hand. Good luck, she whispered while she watched the spaceship disappear in the sky, catching wormholes. Everyone that ever followed science in school has at some point fantasies about time travel or wormholes. Few if any humans have ever experienced it. According to the Anunnaki Bible, time travel is non-existent, but wormholes are everywhere. What does it really feel like to enter a wormhole? Interlude 2014. At 2 p.m., I had a delivery from C&W Food on Wheels coming. At 1:55, 5 minutes before the expected deliverance, I had to use the bathroom. I felt pretty stressed at the time and didn't want to make the meeting feel awkward. When I was done, I went to the kitchen and watched the clock on the microwave oven. 13:55. I must have been done in less than a minute, I thought to myself. I started doing the dishes and calculated that the amount of cups and plates would take at least 12 minutes to finish. All the time, I was concentrating on the doorbell. I didn't want to miss them. As soon as the dishes were done, I watched the clock again. 13:55. I thought that it must have stopped, so I went out and picked up my cell phone. 13:55. It felt weird, but I didn't mind since they both showed at the same time. Then I filled the washing machine with clothes, cleaned the floors on the first floor, and even had time to prepare lunch. It started to feel like I got stuck in time somehow. I went back to the clock on the microwave oven and saw that I still had 1 minute to go before 14 p.m. I just put everything down and kept staring at the clock. Suddenly it turned, and a couple of seconds later my doorbell rang. Emmanuel and Nathan looked at the thousands of stars surrounding them with childlike joy. "We will soon enter a wormhole and the blackness of space will fill with colors," Ira said. Emmanuel, who wanted to know everything and most often thought he'd wanted to share his adventures with late Queen Anne, tried to speak .u. Ira, who'd seemed to somehow read their thoughts, answered, "A wormhole can do two things. It can speed time up or slow it down. If time is slowed down, we can walk 1,000 miles in only a minute. In the wormhole, we manage to use each fraction of a second as a minute, and it won't affect us at all. If we speed ourselves up with the help of a machine like this spaceship, the fraction of the minute will become a fraction of the fraction. Still, on the outside of the wormhole, time passes normally. This means as long as you're in a wormhole, time will not pass or time will pass very little. The second wormhole is the opposite and speeds time up. You have surely felt it at some point, since it is the easiest wormhole to catch. You see a vase falling from the table only 20 centimeters from your hand. You reach out and for some reason, you are far too slow. Nathan and Emmanuel agree in thought, and this is so exciting that they just want to know more and more. Nathan also wants to know where the colors will come from when they enter the wormhole. Ira answers ... We will see that what cannot be seen when going slowly, but going only fast without a wormhole will not help. A wormhole is like a current in a sea. You see time because you are young, as the event of the sun going up and down and measuring everything in it like it has a weight, but not a substance. If it has a weight, you think you can lower it and go back, but if you also see the substance, you will understand that for anything to go back, the substance must follow. If any current changes direction, it will still be a running forward. What you will see now is the colors of all particles you didn't know existed but coexist with us all. Soon the colors around the spaceship intensifies and the lot of the universe looks like a brilliant multicolored supernova in a kaleidoscope, and for an hour before the wormhole closes, they see the shapes and colors change. Then in the distance a magnificent ship is growing larger and larger. Could you believe you knew where Tay's ship were? Ira asks Emmanuel. Emmanuel swims up close to the glass dome and is amazed by what he sees. Soon Nathan does the same thing. Amazing, just amazing, they both think as they stare out into space on a ship larger than 100 Navy vessels together. "Oh, this is only the front side," Ira says as an answer to their thoughts.